Episode 75.
Yes, I think I'll have this one,
Said Hermione. She went up to the counter and handed over 15 sickles and 2 canutes, Ron still breathing down her neck.
Ron,
She said severely as she turned and trod on his feet.
this is exactly why Ginny hasn't told you she's seeing Michael. She knew you'd take it badly, so don't harp on about it for heaven's sake.
What do you mean? Who's taken anything badly? I'm not going to harp on about anything. Ron continued to chunter under his breath all the way down the street. Hermione rolled her eyes at Harry and then said in an undertone, while Ron was muttering imprecations about Michael Corner,
And talking about Michael and Ginny, what about Cho and you?
"What do you mean?" said Harry quickly. It was as though boiling water was rising rapidly inside him, a burning sensation that was causing his face to smart in the cold. Had he been that obvious?
Well,
Said Hermione, smiling slightly.
she just couldn't keep her eyes off you, could she?
Harry had never before appreciated just how beautiful the village of Hogsmeade was. Chapter 17. Educational Decree Number 24. Harry felt happier for the rest of the weekend than he had done all term. He and Ron spent much of Sunday catching up with all their homework again, and although this could hardly be called fun, the last burst of autumn sunshine persisted. So, rather than sitting hunched over tables in the common room, they took their work outside and lounged in the shade of a large beech tree on the edge of the lake. Hermione, who, of course, was up to date with all her work, brought more wool outside with her and bewitched her knitting needles so that they flashed and clicked in midair beside her, producing more hats and scarves. The knowledge that they were doing something to resist Umbridge and the Ministry, and that he was a key part of the rebellion, gave Harry a feeling of immense satisfaction. He kept reliving Saturday's meeting in his mind. All those people coming to him to learn defense against the dark arts, and the looks on their faces as they'd heard some of the things he'd done, and Cho praising his performance in the Triwizard Tournament. The knowledge that all those people did not think him a lying weirdo, but someone to be admired, buoyed him up so much that he was still cheerful on Monday morning, despite the imminent prospect of all his least favorite classes. He and Ron headed downstairs from their dormitory together, discussing Angelina's idea that they were to work on a new move called the sloth grip roll during that night's Quidditch practice. And not until they were halfway across the sunlit common room did they notice the addition to the room that had already attracted the attention of a small group of people. A large sign had been affixed to the Gryffindor notice board, so large that it covered everything else on there. The list of second-hand spellbooks for sale, the regular reminders of school rules from Argus Filch, the Quidditch team training schedule, the offers to barter certain chocolate frog cards for others, the Weasleys' new advertisement for testers, the dates of the Hogsmeade weekends, and the lost and found notices. The new sign was printed in large black letters, and there was a highly official-looking seal at the bottom, beside a neat and curly signature.
By order of the High Inquisitor of Hogwarts, all student associations, societies, teams, groups, and clubs are henceforth disbanded. An organization, society, team, group, or club is hereby defined as a regular meeting of 3 or more students. Permission to reform may be sought from the High Inquisitor, Professor Umbridge. No student organization, society, team, group, or club may exist without the knowledge and approval of the High Inquisitor. Any student found to have formed or to belong to an organization, society, team, group, or club that has not been approved by the High Inquisitor will be expelled. The above is in accordance with Educational Decree Number 24, signed Dolores King Umbridge, High Inquisitor.
Harry and Ron read the notice over the heads of some anxious-looking second years.
Does this mean they're going to shut down the Gobstones Club?
One of them asked his friend. I reckon you'll be okay with gobstones, Ron said darkly, making the second year jump. I don't think we're going to be as lucky, though, do you? He asked Harry as the second years hurried away. Harry was reading the notice through again. The happiness that had filled him since Saturday was gone. His insides were pulsing with rage. This isn't a coincidence, he said, his hands forming fists. She knows. She can, said Ron at once. There were people listening in that pub. And let's face it, we don't know how many of the people who turned up we can trust. Any of them could have run off and told Umbridge. And he thought they had believed him. Thought they even admired him. Zacharias Smith, said Ron at once, punching his fist into his hand. Or, I thought that Michael Corner had a really shifty look, too. I wonder if Hermione's seen this yet, Harry said, looking around at the door to the girls' dormitories. Let's go and tell her, said Ron. He bounded forward, pulled open the door, and set off up the spiral staircase. He was on the 6th stair when it happened. There was a loud, wailing, klaxon-like sound, and the steps melted together to make a long, smooth stone slide. There was a brief moment when Ron tried to keep running, arms working madly like windmills. Then he toppled over backwards and shot down the newly created slide, coming to rest on his back at Harry's feet. I don't think we're allowed in the girls' dormitories, said Harry, pulling Ron to his feet and trying not to laugh. 2 fourth-year girls came zooming gleefully down the stone slide.
Ooh, who tried to get upstairs?
They giggled happily, leaping to their feet and ogling Harry and Ron. Me, said Ron, who was still rather disheveled. I didn't realize that would happen. It's no fair, he added to Harry, as the girls headed off for the portrait hall, still giggling madly. Hermione's allowed in our dormitory. How come we're not allowed?
Well, it's an old-fashioned rule, said Hermione,
who had just slid neatly onto a rug in front of them and was now getting to her feet.
But it says in Hogwarts A History that the founders thought boys were less trustworthy than girls. Anyway, why were you trying to get in there?
To say you. Look at this, said Ron, dragging her over to the notice board. Hermione's eyes slid rapidly down the notice. Her expression became stony. Someone must have blabbed to her, Ron said angrily.
They can't have done,
said Hermione in a low voice. You're so naive, said Ron. You think because you're all honorable and trustworthy.
No, they can't have done because I put a jinx on that piece of parchment we all signed, said Hermione grimly. Believe me, if anyone's run off and told Umbridge, we'll know exactly who they are, and they will really regret it.
What'll happen to them? Said Ron eagerly.
Well, put it this way, said Hermione. It'll make Eloise Midgen's acne look like a couple of cute freckles. Come on, let's get down to breakfast and see what the others think. I wonder whether this has been put up in all the houses.
It was immediately apparent on entering the great hall that Umbridge's sign had not only appeared in Gryffindor Tower. There was a peculiar intensity about the chatter and an extra measure of movement in the hall as people scurried up and down their tables, conferring on what they had read. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had barely taken their seats when Neville, Dean, Fred, George, and Ginny descended upon them.
Did you see it? Do you reckon she knows? What are we going to do?
They were all looking at Harry. He glanced around to make sure there were no teachers near them. We're going to do it anyway, of course, he said quietly.
No, you'd say that,
said George, beaming and thumping Harry on the arm.
The prefects as well, said Fred,
looking quizzically at Ron and Hermione.
Of course,
said Hermione coolly. Here comes Ernie and Hannah Abbott, said Ron, looking over his shoulder. And those Ravenclaw blokes, and Smith. And no one looks very spotty.